patience is really difficult in sales. I think we all naturally have an inclination to want to take a step into the next role. And I think one thing that's really important to remember is that the promotion lasts for a minute. It lasts for a day, right? But our success in that role is everlasting. So,
y'all new to the game.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Morgan J. Ingram here, host of the SDR Chronicles, bringing you motivational tips and tactics for your SDR career, your account executive sales career, and also your entrepreneurial career, as I believe that sales development is the mantra and vocal point for your career and also not only for your life, because we use sales development every single day. And today I have Cassie Fields, VP of Sales and also Business Development at FieldEdge. And we're talking about a very important topic from an executive level and for people that are scaling their companies, which is diving into the component of building a career path in a fast scaling SDR team. So Cassie, tell us a little bit more about yourself and why you're excited about the topic today.
yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thank you for having me. Very excited to get to talk to you today and talk to your audience. Really excited about the topic as a whole, because I think culture and SDR promotion is a hot topic, but also something that really needs to be talked about more in the industry, because I think there's a lot of upside for SDRs, and we'll talk about some of that today. But for myself, I started out in outside sales, so started from the ground up, and very quickly realized I didn't want to do that anymore, and moved into inside sales and worked my way up in a publicly traded company, a cybersecurity company, and really have focused in everything, SMB sales, enterprise, complex sales, and now working at FieldEdge. I am managing, as you said, the sales org here and also the business development function for the org. So we've grown quite rapidly. So we've taken the business from about 60 employees to 150 in the past 2 years, and taken our sales team from 6 to 41 in the past 2 years. So we've seen significant growth, and obviously have had to think a lot about this exact topic. How do we build career paths, and how do we retain our top talent? And so excited to talk with you about it today and share what we've learned.
Absolutely. And then for you, before we dive into the questions that I have prepared for today, from just an SDR perspective, like I'm guessing as you begin your career, you were probably in that type of role. How was that feeling? And then how did you fall really into sales in the first place? Probably not something that you were just like, oh, let me go do sales.
Yeah, I actually was a biology major, so sales made total sense. The transition made a lot of sense.
Logical.
Yeah, right. No, but ultimately I got into sales for the same reason a lot of people do. How can I make money? How can I pay off these student loans? And so, I did start off, everything I did when I was a direct contributor was full sales cycle. So I did play the role of an SDR and an AE all in one, which was a lot of fun and challenging in its own ways. But, I started out as that individual contributor and really started trying to understand the complexities of different types of sales and different types of markets. And so, it really intrigued me. I wanted to get into the strategy side of things, and really thought that management was the track I wanted to take. And so, I got the opportunity at NCC Group, that cybersecurity company I was mentioning, to focus on go-to-market strategies for some of their new products, and ultimately ended up taking over sales for North America for that business. And so that was a wild ride that really built my career there. I had 5 years tenure, so I had been a direct contributor and promoted up, and then ended up here at FieldEdge. Wanted to get back into sort of a startup type of environment and a fast-paced environment to really focus on building a sales org. And so that's why I came here, and ultimately how I got into the role that I'm in today.
Absolutely. And I like that background that you touched on, because it goes into the next question, which is, how do you stay patient in an SDR role when an executive team tells you to wait? And I'm guessing from your experience, or probably sometimes as you're in your IC role, you're like, okay, I'm ready for the next role, and ready for the next role. So kind of give the background on that and your answer to that question.
Yeah. So, I think patience is really difficult in sales. I think we all naturally have an inclination to want to take a step into the next role. And I think one thing that's really important to remember is that the promotion lasts for a minute. It lasts for a day, right? But our success in that role is everlasting. So, sometimes we drive to that promotion without really thinking about whether or not we're ready for that role. And I think that that's the shortfall that we have today. And I think that we all have to be aware of that and thinking about it. I think and some interesting stats that have come out over the past year. I think these were from Bridge Group specifically, but for SDRs in particular, they've talked a lot about the success of that transition to AE and what kind of tenure you really need to be successful in role. And so I think the stat was at 11 months tenure or less, an SDR has a 55% chance of failure, which is an astronomically high percentage. That decreases drastically to 6% if we wait just 4 additional months and wait to promote it around the 15-month mark. So going back to being patient and how and why you should wait, I think the stats speak for themselves, but I think the important part is you build up that product and industry knowledge that's so critical when you're stepping into an AE role. You really need to know your target market. You need to know the product. You need to know the business and the customers and what drives them. And so I think that tenure, as you continue to get that, really helps expose you to more and more of that, which ultimately makes you successful in the job long term.
Absolutely. And I've heard of that stat before, and I want to hear your context on, okay, so from 11 months to 14 months, why do you feel like that's from 55% to 6%? Why is that such a discrepancy?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. And I think that, I think a large part of it is, as I was saying, at that sort of 11-month mark, you're still getting a little bit of the lay of the land in the business. You're still learning about the industry that you're targeting. As much as we think we're experts in that, I mean, I'm still learning about my market today, and I've been in this market for 2.5 years now. So I think markets change, customer dynamics change, and so I think you have to gain more knowledge over time. And I think that 4 months seems like a short period of time, but you gain so much in that time because your conversations and the quality of the kinds of conversations you're having as an SDR change in that 4-month period. They go from, selling a demo to selling on value and understanding customer pains. And that's kind of what we see here on our sales floor. Between those two tenures, that's usually the shift that happens. We start to understand value selling on a totally different level.
Absolutely. So within that kind of goes into what does that path look like? So how do you plan a path for an entry-level sales position person when the company is scaling really fast? Like, how are you making sure that people are hitting the points they need to hit?
Yeah. So this was something that we really focused on when we started scaling the org 2 years ago. So one thing that we thought was really important were sort of increasing responsibility with tenure. And even if that's in what people would call today micro promotions, right? So giving people the opportunity to step from an SDR into a senior SDR. And maybe I've seen that done in different ways. Some businesses do that by market segment. They do it by vertical. Here, we do a little bit of both. And we give access to better leads and different lead qualities with tenure so that you can start to have more complex conversations with customers. And so, I think that's important, building in steps along the way to continue to enhance and better your skill set. But in addition to that, I think one of the things that we've learned is you also have to look for and expose the team to different opportunities across the business. An SDR doesn't just have to move into an AE role. And so I think that what we've explored that has made us successful and really increasing our retention rates is by having conversations openly about business development, about customer success, marketing, product tracks. And we've actually promoted a number of SDRs into each one of those roles over time. And so I think, we've just found it important to retain that product and industry knowledge and those people that have committed themselves to the business. And so I think that's really important in sort of building paths is not just the SDR to AE path, but opening up possibilities across the org.
Yeah, that's the critical point. 2 points there is 1, you're building levels within the SDR. And then obviously 2, you're letting people go in different paths. So I'm going to talk about 1 is the levels in the SDR. When did you all make the decision on that? And then what's been the reception or feedback from SDRs as they go through those different levels?
Yeah, we probably started offering that around, call it 8 months of really launching the SDR team, because that's when we really started to need to think about promoting people into a new role and giving new responsibilities. And so, it's been incredibly well received. I think we still have work to do there, to be candid. I think that, we could definitely, as we start thinking about more market segmentation and things like that, we'll open up more and more opportunities for those micro level promotions. We're just not there yet as an org. But as of now, we have, a large number of SDRs that we're staying on and getting promoted in that senior SDR role, and then deciding of the opportunities we have where they want to take their career next.
Absolutely. And so when you determine, or when you ask those questions to figure out, okay, where do you want to go next, right? Because obviously you don't want to assume someone wants to be an AE. You take them through AE training, you spend your time, and then they're like, I want to go to customer success. And you're like, wait, why did you tell me this like 6 months ago?
Yeah. I mean, I think that we do start having those conversations pretty openly from the start. So even at the interview table, we're talking about long-term plans. We want to make sure that people want to be in sales when they're coming into that SDR role, but oftentimes SDRs are young in their career. They get in there wanting to try sales, and then something shifts in role. So what we do is a 3, 6, and 9 month sort of formal review. I mean, we do one-on-ones constantly, but in these reviews, part of that conversation is, how are you feeling about the job? What are you thinking long-term about your career? And we're trying to identify skill sets that would match up with different opportunities in the business as a part of those conversations at that point.
Okay, cool. No, that's good. And then how do you, from an internal standpoint, how do you set up those interviews? So SDR wants to go to SDR manager, SDR wants to go to marketing. How does that handoff work? And then let's say if someone has an interview and they're like, that internal person isn't ready for that position, how do you handle them coming back on that team?
Yeah, so I think the last part of your question we addressed as a part of that initial conversation, right? It's if there's no background in that type of role, we have to have an honest conversation about, hey, listen, we think that these skills that you have today could be beneficial in that role, and so as a result of that, we want to have some conversations to see if we could find something for you there. But we're going to have to prove that you have the skill set necessary to do that, and there's a chance that it won't work. And so we just have to be candid about that up front and set those expectations, because what we don't want is, we don't want to promise opportunities in other roles and then have people leave the business because they don't get that, and we lose them on the SDR side as well. I mean, our ultimate goal is to retain good talent in whatever capacity we can across the business. So we try to be as candid as possible as a part of those initial conversations. But as far as the interview process is concerned, it first starts with a departmental conversation between function heads. So, if it's somebody coming from my team going over to the CS side, I'm going to go over and have a conversation with that department head to say, hey, I've got somebody that could be right for this role. These are their skill sets. I think it's worth a conversation. And it's a bit informal at that point, but we would sort of take them through the traditional interview process that we would take an outside candidate through as well. But it starts with that internal conversation first to kind of lay the foundation for that conversation.
Yeah, no, yeah, I like that. And I'm glad that you guys have a framework for that. Because some people might just be like, oh, well, customer success, we'll just throw them on the team. And it's like, well, there's got to be some process behind that, right? So
yeah, I mean, we've made that mistake too. Don't get me wrong. We're not perfect. We've done a few of those and learned from it quickly, but it has happened. Do what?
I said, but you learn. So
yeah,
now
exactly.
The audience knows, hey, look, guys, don't just throw people on teams. Have a process in place Cassie's talking about.
Well, and not only that, but right, like just because somebody raises their hand and says that they want to be in marketing doesn't mean that they're going to be good at that. So again, going back to one of the first questions you had, we want to make sure that we're setting people up for success. And so if they don't have the right skill set, we don't want to put them in that role just because they raise their hand for it. We want to make sure that we can help develop them in role and that they're ultimately going to be able to hit the ground running. And so that's an important part of that conversation as well.
For sure. And then it goes, this next part is, okay, now you understand that someone is possibly getting ready to get promoted or things of that nature. You touched on this, but this is back on the SDR front to AE from your standpoint and executive. How do you determine whether or not someone's ready for the next step?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's one SDRs often have. Yeah. What kind of qualities are we looking for in someone to promote? And I think what sticks out in my mind is something a mentor told me years ago, and at the time I hated this advice. I thought it was terrible. Now I understand it, but he said that promotion should be uneventful. So when your promotion is announced, no one should look up or be surprised by that. And what he meant by that was you have to be exhibiting the traits of that role prior to ever getting the promotion. And so I think that I definitely see that today, and I think that that's really important. It's something that we look for. So some examples of that would be, I think a natural curiosity is so critical. And that's not just for promotion, that's across the board, and just being good at your job, being good at sales. How can I constantly be working to get better? What are the things that I could be doing? Commitment to betterment is kind of how I would describe that, right? What am I reading? What am I doing? Who am I talking to? Am I asking questions and learning about the product? Am I learning about better ways to increase my conversion rates? That's really critical. But it's also, it's commitment to the job. So it's, can you come in? Are you going to remain focused? Are you going to try to be at the top of the leaderboard? Those are important. And so we constantly look for that as a part of that transition. Are they already displaying these characteristics? And if they are, that's a surefire sign that we need to be talking about promotion.
Absolutely. And can you tell that? So let's say, can you tell that early on, or do you see the shift in some people and then you recognize, okay, that person's moving in the right direction? Like, how do you insert yourself within your SDR team when you see someone is struggling, but you know they have potential to be great?
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of conversations at the management table about our teams as a whole. So we really break down our top performers and people that, as you described, have a lot of potential but really need support. And so what we really focus on is developing individual coaching plans, whether you're already ripping and running and you're a top performer, or you have potential and you're struggling. We all need a plan for each one of them and how we take them to the next level. And so those, as a part of those plans and conversations, we talk about potential and opportunity for them to try to drive them to that goal. And so, I think it's important to continuously have that feedback loop and transparency with the rep. And so we really focus on trying to do that on a regular basis.
Absolutely. And then from there, right? So you got the team, they're moving in promotions, you see different things. This is something that I always want everyone to listen to. We talked about this before we even hopped on here, but why are people trying to move so fast when they know that going short term is going to hurt them in the long term?
I think that's a natural tendency for everybody to want to push for a promotion, right? It's a title change. It comes with more money. It comes with, recognition. And I think we all crave that. I think that what we have to keep in mind is exactly the things that we've talked about today. If we take a little bit more time to develop our skills and really be ready for that promotion, the conversation at the dinner table is a lot different when I come home and say, I'm killing it at work. I'm killing my quota. My boss loves me. I'm doing well on my job. And by the way, here's my paycheck, compared to, hey, I got promoted. And 6 months later, I'm not hitting my quota. I'm not making any money. This is a bad place for me to be. So I think it's just important to keep that context. Am I truly ready for that role? Because it's not about the promotion. It's about your long-term success in the role. And that's what I think everybody needs to bear in mind.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. It's the really long-term success. Obviously, 14 months in an SDR role, that sounds like a gruesome long time, but you have a long-term plan in your career. And that's what all my mentors tell me. It's like, I always want things to move so fast. And they're like, wait, you got like 20, 30, 40 years. Like, why are you trying to rush so fast into one thing? And it's like, when you get there, it's going to be like, you got there, but then it's always like, what's next? So it's trying to understand that, like, long-term, think about what you can do while you're in the role that you're in, maximize that opportunity, that skill set, and then move forward in the direction you want to go to.
That's a really good point too. I mean, maximizing and really understanding the skill set that you have now and getting to the point where you're, you should be a rock star in what you're doing now and how you're executing your individual responsibility and role today. If you're not there, how do I get there? And let's master that before moving on to the next step, which would be AE, team lead, manager, whatever that might be.
Right. Absolutely. And then within that, so from an organizational standpoint, the path for success for a rep, what is it if the company's moving fast and you cannot put them in a proper career path? So, hey, maybe I can't promote you to AE because we have other stuff going on. I can't move you to customer success because they're not ready to fill that role. What do you do with that rep? What's that conversation like?
Yeah, I mean, I think for FieldEdge, we try really hard, specifically for us, we try really hard not to get into that situation because we try to focus really heavily on internal promotion. And if we're at a point where we have to hire from outside, that is a difficult conversation. Because obviously you've got a team that's working hard to try to get that promotion, and we don't want to discourage a team. So, I think that a lot of times we've only had to do that on a handful of scenarios, but explaining the why is so critical as a part of that conversation, and helping to outline for the team even though we've had to hire outside for this position now, it doesn't mean there aren't other opportunities later. And I think for growing organizations, and certainly for us, other opportunities open up monthly. We're creating new positions all the time because as a growing org, that's just a natural progression of the business. And so you never know what kinds of opportunities are going to open up. And I think it's just important to have that open communication between management and the team about why and what's coming, so that ultimately SDRs can make a decision about, is this a place for me, or do I need to be making some tough decisions looking for a business that's going to give me some opportunity to grow?
Yeah, and that's the discretion for the rep to figure out how long am I willing to wait, what am I willing to do?
Right, exactly. And again, going back to your other point, have I maximized my skill set and role before I move on to the next?
Exactly. And I think that's one point that people miss the most, is like not understanding that you have to maximize that time. Like, are you proficient on the phone? Are you doing good discovery on a cold call? If you can't do discovery and qualification on a cold call, you're not gonna be able to do it on a disco call. So it's all those things you got to think about.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so from there, it's like, let's think about this, right? So what do you find the most exciting in building a career path for SDRs while they're going throughout their career, right? Because obviously you're VP sales, there are a ton of other things that you have priorities on. So kind of talk to that.
Yeah, I think building career paths and building careers is one of the most exciting parts of the job. So, I had this conversation the other day with a member of my management team and just said, our job is to develop people. And that's got to be at the forefront of our minds at all times. And so I think what's exciting about that are the success stories along the way. And so we've had quite a few here that stick out in my mind immediately when you've posed this question. There was a guy, the second promotion from SDR to AE for our team. He started out the year really strong, first 6 months, really strong player on the team. First full year in an AE role, the guy's number 2 on the leaderboard. He sold over $1 million in ARR last month, which on average our reps do about $850,000 a year in ARR. So he's absolutely killing it.
Yeah.
And to watch his transition from SDR to AE and the skill set that he's gained and how strong he's become as an AE is such a phenomenal story. And it's so exciting to watch him personally develop and to watch his career really blossom. So I think that's the part that is exciting for all of us, is watching those success stories and helping to be a part of that.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I actually talked to another leader today, and his goal was to promote 100 SDRs to manager or closing roles. And I was like, I'm fired up for you, because it's an amazing thing to talk about, right? And because at the end of the day, it's like, that's really comes from, when I was an SDR manager, it was having someone who maybe had been straight out of college like me, or their second job, and they really don't know what the things to do. And then seeing them grow as an individual and then go into that AE role and hearing that they're doing well, or go into customer success and they're one of the top customer success reps. Like, that is the success stories. And that's why the SDR position is so fruitful and it's so exciting, because that's a proven ground for so many people to move to the next step.
It really is. And I think, SDRs are the front line. They're having more customer conversations and prospect conversations than anybody else in the business in most scenarios. So,
right.
To get that foundation and really understand at a deep level more about your customer and how they, what their businesses look like, what their pains really are, that sets you up for success no matter what department you go into. And so I think it's a really critical role and such a phenomenal first step for somebody building their sales career, or any career, honestly, in the business world.
Absolutely. And that goes to the last question that I ask every single person, and obviously goes on topic here, is what's the one more piece of advice that you give to SDRs as they enter into their new role?
Yeah, I think the thing that comes up most often in my meetings with SDRs is focusing on the small wins. I think that's so critical in that role, because I think so often we get focused on, did I get a demo today? And that's important, right? We have to be focused on top funnel. We've got to be focused on demos. But at the end of the day, I often tell my reps, focus on the wins on every call. So if I get off the call with 3 pieces of information I didn't have before, that's a successful call. Mark it down. Pat yourself on the back at the end of the day for all the calls that you got 3 pieces of information on, because if I can go back and leverage those pieces of information tomorrow on my next call, or as I nurture those leads, I am set up for significantly higher success rates as I start to try to convert those leads later. So I think that's the important part. Celebrate the small wins and focus on getting as much information as possible as you start trying to nurture your lead.
Absolutely. Well, before we wrap up here, I appreciate all the insights that you've given today. Is there any shout outs, comments, anything that you want to mention before we get out of here today with this interview?
No, I appreciate you and the opportunity to get to speak with you today on the topic. As I said, I think, very excited to talk about the culture topic. I think it's incredibly important across the sales industry as a whole, but we take it very seriously here at FieldEdge as well. Only shout out I guess I'd give is we're hiring at FieldEdge. So if you're an SDR looking to start a career or continue to build one, give us a call. We're looking for SDRs and rockstars to join our team. So it's going to be an exciting year in FY19 and looking forward to adding some new talent to the business.
Awesome. Well, again, guys, thanks so much for being on the show. As I always say, guys, keep dialing and I'll see you guys soon.
Thanks, Morgan. Bye.